From the moment I joined the service, I knew my life would be shaped by extremes, harsh landscapes, tough decisions, and the ever-present shadow of danger. I remember the sweltering heat of my first deployment, the way it clung to my skin and pressed down like an unrelenting weight. I had barely begun to grasp the enormity of the responsibility I had taken on, yet I was already learning the language of discipline and sacrifice. Days bled into weeks as my team and I trained, fought, and adapted to the unyielding demands of combat, our resolve forged in the fire of experience. Over the years, I developed a hardened focus, the kind that could only be earned by surviving where others fell. Each mission was a test of endurance and ingenuity, pushing the limits of what I thought possible. Yet it wasn't just the missions that shaped me. It was the camaraderie, the unspoken bond between brothers and sisters in arms. There was solace in knowing I wasn't alone, even in the loneliest corners of the world. These experiences made me who I was on the night of that pivotal mission as I sat aboard the roaring aircraft, ready to descend into the unknown. Beneath us sprawled an endless stretch of barren desert, its silence disrupted only by the constant, thunderous hum of the C-130 Hercules as it cut through the sky. The aircraft's clamor was a familiar companion, a sound as much a part of my reality as the gear strapped to my body. My team and I were seated in a rigid formation along the cabin walls, each of us focused on the meticulous ritual of checking and rechecking our equipment. It was another mission, on the surface routine, but the weight of its implications hung heavy in the air. The cabin's red light switched to green. With a final adjustment to my oxygen mask, I joined the others as we moved to the ramp. One by one, we vanished into the darkness, the cold night air whipping around us as we descended toward the earth. The jump went flawlessly. We drifted down like shadows, our black parachutes blending seamlessly with the starless sky. Touching down on the sand, I quickly detached my chute, shouldered my rifle, and scanned the horizon. A soft murmur in my earpiece confirmed the team was intact and in position. Our objective lay 5 kilometers away, a heavily fortified compound near Kandahar, believed to house a key insurgent leader. The mission's stakes were high. Eliminating this figurehead could severely disrupt enemy operations. Every step forward was deliberate, using the rugged terrain to stay concealed. The compound's high walls and sporadic guard towers loomed ahead as we split into 2 fire teams to approach from opposite sides. I led the right flank, ensuring every movement was precise. At exactly 0200 hours, we breached the perimeter with coordinated efficiency. Suppressed tools eliminated sentries before they could react, and the first phase was complete without incident. But the quiet didn't last. A sharp-eyed insurgent spotted movement and sounded the alarm. Chaos erupted as intense combat shattered the stillness, bullets ricocheting off walls and spraying dust into the air. "Suppressive fire!" I called into the comms, dropping to one knee to fire controlled bursts. My team responded instantly, providing cover as the second group pushed toward the main building. Inside, the compound was a labyrinth of narrow hallways and crude concrete rooms. We moved systematically, clearing each space as the defenders scrambled in disarray. Overpowered and unprepared, they didn't stand a chance. Reaching the final room, I recognized the target immediately. His face had been etched into my mind from countless briefings. He moved to grab a tool, but I reacted faster. One precise action, and it was over. "Target down," I reported calmly, though my hands trembled slightly as the adrenaline began to fade. We exited swiftly, slipping back into the desert just as reinforcements arrived, too late to save their leader. By the time we reached the extraction point, dawn was painting the horizon with shades of orange and gold. Back at base, I replayed the mission in my mind, every decision, every moment. Then the commanding officer called me in. His rare smile caught me off guard as he handed over a folded piece of paper. "Morgan, you've earned this. You're going home." Home. The word felt surreal. Months away had made it almost a distant memory. Images of reunion videos flooded my mind. Soldiers surprising their families, dogs bounding with excitement, children crying or leaping into their parents' arms. I wanted that moment, that joy. I began planning right away. The idea was simple but meaningful. I'd quietly slip into the house and surprise them, maybe during dinner or while they were watching TV. I could already see Linda's expression, her hands flying to her face in shock before she ran to embrace me. I pictured Oscar freezing for a second before breaking into a grin, older now but still my boy, leaping into my arms. And Butch, my loyal German shepherd, charging toward me, barking and wagging his tail like a propeller, trying to knock me over in excitement. The flight home felt like an eternity. Each mile brought me closer to them, Linda, Oscar, and Butch. The anticipation was nearly unbearable. I rehearsed the moment over and over, imagining their reactions and the pure joy of being reunited. Finally, I arrived. The house looked just as I remembered. White siding, blue shutters, the familiar porch where Linda loved to sip her morning coffee. My heart pounded with a mix of excitement and nerves as I stood in the driveway. It was time to go inside, to leave behind the months of separation and reclaim the life I had been longing for. I parked silently and pulled out my phone, pressing record. "Time to surprise the family," I whispered, forcing a smile at the camera. "Let's see if Butch still remembers me." The porch creaked softly under my boots as I stepped toward the front door. I called for Butch, expecting to hear the familiar sound of paws scrambling on the floor or a bark echoing through the house. Instead, there was only silence. Frowning, I stepped inside. The living room looked exactly as it should. Oscar's backpack was slung on the floor near the couch, and a half-empty glass of juice sat on the coffee table. It felt lived in, familiar, yet something about the stillness seemed off. I called out again, louder this time, but still no response. My chest tightened as I moved cautiously through the house, boots muffled on the carpet. I was heading toward the kitchen when I froze. Muffled voices drifted from the bedroom. Soft laughter, a man's voice mixed with Linda's. My pulse quickened, and the phone in my hand shook as I slowly approached the partially open door. My heart pounded, each step heavier than the last, until I reached the door and nudged it open. What I saw made my breath catch in my throat. Linda, my wife, was in bed with another man. He was shirtless, his tattooed back glistening with sweat. For a moment, the world seemed to blur, my mind unable to process the scene before me. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. Rage surged through me. I lunged, grabbing the man by the shoulders and yanking him off the bed. He stumbled, disoriented as I swung. My fists connected with his face, his ribs, his jaw, fueled by pure anger. He tried to resist, but I was stronger, angrier, and relentless. "Stop it, Richard!" Linda's panicked voice broke through the chaos. She grabbed at my arms, tears streaking her face. "You're going to liquidate him!" But I couldn't stop. All I could see was the betrayal, the man in my house, in my bed with my wife. My knuckles hit again and again until Linda threw herself between us, forcing me back. The man collapsed to the floor, groaning, his face swollen and bruised. Linda knelt beside him, shielding him as though protecting him from a monster. "You're insane!" she screamed, her voice cracking. The sound of sirens cut through the haze of rage, growing louder with every passing second. A neighbor must have called the cops. The wail of the approaching cars jolted me slightly back to reality. I stepped away from the battered man, my chest heaving and my fists trembling, dark stains smeared across them. The front door burst open and officers stormed in. Among them was Vince Parker, a childhood friend I hadn't seen in years. His expression shifted from shock to something heavier as he took in the scene. Me standing there, fists stained, the man groaning on the floor, and Linda sobbing. "Rich," he said softly, stepping toward me, his voice barely audible. "Don't make this harder." I raised my hand slowly, military training kicking in. "Do what you have to," I muttered, voice cold and steady. Vince sighed, almost apologetically, as he cuffed my wrists. "I'll fix this," he whispered. But I said nothing. What could he possibly fix? My life had unraveled in an instant, and no words could undo it. As they led me out, I locked eyes with Linda. Her face was pale, streaked with tears, her expression a mixture of guilt and anguish. She knew the damage she had done, but I had nothing left to say to her. My gaze dropped to the man on the floor, who had the nerve to smirk through his swollen face. A fresh wave of anger swelled inside me, but I kept my mouth shut. "Start counting days," I said coldly, my voice low and unyielding before walking out the door. The fluorescent lights of the holding cell buzzed softly as I sat on the bench, staring at my bruised knuckles. My mind raced, replaying everything, every word, every punch, every moment that had led me here. Just hours ago, I had been planning a joyous reunion. Now, I was sitting in a cell, my life turned inside out, with nothing but silence and regret. The officer unlocked the cell door, handing over a phone for a single call. Without hesitation, I contacted my commanding officer, explaining the situation and seeking his help. He assured me that his daughter, Melissa, a skilled lawyer, was on her way to handle things. When Melissa arrived, her presence was immediately commanding. Confident and composed, she wasted no time in understanding the events that had unfolded. I explained everything, from my unexpected return home to the betrayal I'd discovered and the resulting altercation. She listened intently, taking notes and assessing the situation. Her initial findings were sobering. My wife had already testified against me and filed a restraining order, a move that raised more questions than answers. Melissa was determined to uncover how it had happened so quickly and vowed to fight on my behalf. The next day, I found myself in court, still in uniform. The sterile, cold atmosphere was a stark contrast to the battlefields I knew, yet the stakes felt just as high. The judge, a stern woman with sharp features, scrutinized the case closely. Her questioning revealed her disdain, particularly regarding the injuries I had inflicted on Luke Brown, the man I'd found in my home. I explained my actions with calm precision, recounting how I had perceived a threat in that moment. My years of training had conditioned me to act decisively, but my intent had not been to liquidate, only to neutralize a perceived danger. While my explanation was factual, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. Melissa remained steadfast, her professionalism unwavering despite the challenges. The weight of the accusations and the reality of my situation loomed large, but I resolved to face it with the same discipline I had carried throughout my military service. The judge called the prosecution to proceed, and Linda took the stand, her demeanor cold and detached. She avoided my gaze as she calmly explained her actions, dismissing our years together. She described Luke Brown as a supportive friend who stepped in to meet her needs during my long absences. With calculated precision, she announced that she had filed for divorce earlier that day, making it clear this was part of a well-orchestrated plan. Luke was next. He approached the stand with a smug confidence, painting himself as the reliable presence Linda needed in my absence. His words were deliberate and stung like a fresh wound, designed to provoke. Melissa's firm grip on my arm kept me grounded as the urge to react boiled within me. The prosecution then called Vincent Parker, the officer who had arrested me. Vince's testimony struck a different tone. He described my cooperation during the arrest and presented evidence from my phone, a video recording of my return home. The footage clearly showed my shock at finding Luke in my house and my immediate reaction, driven by the belief that Linda was in danger. Despite the clarity of the evidence, Judge Brenda Smith's disdain was palpable. She addressed me with a tone dripping in condescension, emphasizing that my military background did not excuse my actions. She accused me of arrogance and dismissed my instincts as reckless. Her words were an attack on my service and character, suggesting that Linda's betrayal was somehow justified by my absence. The judge's remarks were a slap in the face. She framed my deployment as neglect, minimizing my sacrifices while justifying Linda's actions. The frustration boiled over, and I stood, slamming my hands on the table. My voice rose, cutting through the courtroom silence as I called out the absurdity of her reasoning. I questioned if my service to the country and orders from the president were to blame for my marriage's collapse, pushing the mockery to its limit. The tension in the room was electric, and the judge's face flushed with anger. Her response was swift and cold, sentencing me to 3 months in prison for contempt of court. The gavel's echo sealed the verdict, leaving the room in a stunned silence. I stood tall, my chest heaving with controlled breaths. Meeting her gaze one last time, I spoke with quiet resolve. "Start counting." Then, without another word, I turned and faced the consequences, refusing to let her see me broken. Time seemed to pause as the gavel struck, signaling the end of the session. The judge rose without a glance in my direction, her dismissal final and sharp. The guards escorted me back to my cell, their footsteps echoing through the corridor before the heavy door slammed shut behind me. I stood motionless, absorbing the sterile hum of fluorescent lights and the distant murmurs of inmates. This was my new reality, a battlefield of steel and concrete. Melissa's scolding echoed in my mind. She'd berated me for my courtroom outburst, accusing me of throwing away a chance to build a solid defense. Her disappointment was evident, but I'd already resigned myself to this outcome. The system had made its decision, and I wasn't going to grovel for understanding. The first days in the cell block were a test. Inmates measured me with every glance, guards mocked me with the nickname Captain America, and the air was thick with tension. The challenge came quickly. A man called Big Red confronted me in the yard. He was built like a boulder, his tattoos adding to his intimidating presence. His challenge was clear, but I didn't waste words. The fight ended swiftly. A precise elbow to his gut, a leg sweep, and a forearm to his throat. Word spread fast. By the third day, no one else dared to test me. One afternoon, a guard banged on my cell and informed me of a visitor. At first, I assumed it was Melissa, ready to lecture me again. But when he mentioned Linda's name, my stomach churned. I debated refusing, but curiosity won. What could she possibly have to say? In the visiting area, Linda entered with an air of composure, wearing a sundress I didn't recognize. Likely something Luke had bought her. She sat across from me, her voice casual and smug, recounting how Luke had moved in with his son, Brandon. She described her life as complete, her words cutting deeper than any insult. I stayed silent, letting her dig herself into the grave she seemed eager to build. She mistook my silence for defeat, smirking as she claimed life had a way of working out. I smiled back, a cold, venomous smile, and leaned forward. My voice was low but deliberate, as I told her to keep counting because payback was inevitable. Her smirk faltered for a moment, but she recovered quickly, rising from the chair with unsettling calm. As she turned to leave, she delivered one final blow. "Oh, and Butch is dead!" Her words struck like a knife. I froze, disbelief flashing across my face. She explained without emotion, claiming the dog had tried to bite Luke. Her decision to have him euthanized was delivered as casually as if she'd discarded an old pair of shoes. Rage surged, but I held it back. Rising to my feet, I simply said, "Add it to the list, and don't stop counting." Then, I turned and walked away. The days inside blended into a relentless rhythm of workouts and vigilance. Each second crawled by, but I marked them all, counting down to the day I would walk out. One day at a time, I prepared for what would come next. About a week into my sentence, Vince showed up unannounced. The guard called my name, and I didn't hesitate. It was a relief to see a familiar face, someone who didn't see me as just another inmate. In the visitation room, Vince looked different, worn down like he was carrying a weight too heavy to shake. He leaned in, speaking low to avoid being overheard. While he admitted he couldn't help me legally, he hinted at another way. He had people, ones who owed him favors and were willing to assist once I was out. His words carried weight. Vince wasn't one to make empty promises. I nodded, trusting his judgment. Time dragged on, but I stayed out of trouble, waiting for the day I'd walk free. When it finally came, Vince was there, waiting in his car. The ride to his place was quiet. He wasn't much for small talk, and neither was I. His house reflected the man himself, simple, functional, and empty of any personal touch. Over drinks, he opened up, sharing a story I hadn't expected. Years ago, his wife had cheated on him. Back then, as a cop, he'd felt helpless against a system that didn't care about his pain. The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable as he recounted how the courts and the system had let him down. He saw himself in me, the same anger, the same betrayal. Arresting me, he admitted, had been a reminder of his own scars. Now, he didn't want me to endure the same downward spiral. Vince made a few calls, his tone clipped and efficient. Soon, a car pulled up outside and 3 men stepped inside, each bringing a distinct presence to the room. Vince introduced them one by one, their stories as heavy as their reputations. First was Nate, a towering, muscular figure who had once been a bar bouncer. He'd intervened to protect a woman from an entitled rich kid. That intervention cost him everything, as the kid's influential father ensured Nate took the fall. A prison sentence followed, during which Nate's mother passed away from cancer. Vince, unable to save her, carried guilt alongside Nate's loss. Next was Mario, a wiry man with sharp eyes behind thick glasses. A tech genius, he'd once exposed corruption at his company, naively trusting the system. Instead, the same system framed him for fraud, sending him to prison for 5 years. Now, he used his skills as a hacker, his quiet demeanor masking a brilliant mind. Finally, there was Chuck, a short, heavy-set man who seemed out of place among the others. His friendly demeanor was deceptive. He was a chemistry prodigy turned meth cook in his youth. Success brought attention, and a tip-off landed him in prison. Despite his past, Vince vouched for his expertise, insisting Chuck's skills could be invaluable. As I took in these unlikely allies, Vince's plan became clearer, but frustration simmered beneath the surface. Pulling him aside, I questioned the necessity of involving them. My instincts screamed to handle things myself, to face my enemies directly and reclaim what was mine. But Vince's steady gaze stopped me short. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about ensuring I survived the battles ahead. Vince's laugh rang out loud and clear, the kind of laugh that told me he'd heard it all before. He shook his head, almost amused by my anger, and spelled it out for me. If I went through with my plan, I'd end up back in jail. Meanwhile, Linda would still be shacked up with her lover, living off my money, while I rotted behind bars. He made it painfully clear that this wasn't the solution I was looking for. I raked a hand through my hair, the frustration building inside me, but Vince wasn't done. He reminded me of the one thing I hadn't stopped to think about. My son. Still a minor, he said. still someone who needed me to make the right decisions. He told me to stay out of the light, to let the professionals handle it, and then he dropped another bombshell. Linda hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She'd broken the law by moving her lover and his kid into my house. That hit me hard. I'd been so blinded by rage, I hadn't fully grasped the depth of what was happening. The next morning, I knew I had to take control. The anger was still there, but my mind was sharp, focused. I called my mom and laid everything out for her. I didn't even need to explain much. She wasn't surprised. She had always seen through Linda, and now her warnings made all the sense in the world. "I need your help," I told her, and she didn't hesitate. The house was hers, and I needed her to step in and take it back. Linda had turned it into her playground, and I wasn't going to let that continue. My mom agreed immediately, saying she'd send the notice for Linda to leave. There was no hesitation in her voice, only resolve, and that gave me a strange sense of relief. Then came the call I had been expecting. Linda. Her number popped up on the screen, and I answered, ready for what I knew was coming. She didn't disappoint. Her voice was a mix of venom and fury, throwing insults and accusations at me like daggers. I stayed silent, letting her scream until her anger started to run out of steam. When her tone shifted to pleading, I knew she was trying a new angle. She begged, saying our son needed the house and that I was being unfair to him. I kept my voice steady, unemotional. I told her the truth. It wasn't my house. The owner wanted it back, and there was nothing more to say. I didn't give her time to respond. I ended the call and let the silence on her end speak for itself. That evening, I sat across from Mario in Vince's cramped, dimly lit living room. Mario was the guy for the kind of work I needed. I explained my plan. I wanted access to Linda's phone and her lover's. I wanted everything. Texts, emails, photos, any dirt I could use. Mario didn't flinch. He raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed by how far I was willing to go, and asked if I was sure. I was sure. More sure than I'd ever been about anything. They had taken everything from me, and now it was my turn to take something from them. Mario led me to his workspace, a tiny room crowded with wires and glowing monitors. The place hummed with the sound of machinery, and he looked completely at home there. He explained the process in simple terms: an email, a link, and then a bot that would give him full access to their phones. It was straightforward, and he worked fast, his hands flying across the keyboard. "Now we wait," he said, hitting the final key and sending the emails. He told me it could take minutes or hours, depending on how long it took for their curiosity to get the better of them. But he was confident they would click. Later that night, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mario. "I'm in, collecting dirt." The first step in my revenge was complete. The following day, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Glancing at the screen, I recognized the number instantly. Bracing myself, I answered, knowing this wasn't going to be a casual chat. Colonel Walker's voice came through, firm but heavy, the tone he used when things were serious. He told me that higher-ups, far above the usual chain of command, were making noise about my recent courtroom outburst. Apparently, my mention of suing the president had struck a nerve. It wasn't just talk anymore. It was a headline that had ruffled feathers in powerful places. I listened in silence, my jaw tightening as I processed his words. Walker, someone who'd always valued my directness, admitted I'd walked into something much larger than I realized. Challenges to authority, especially public ones, didn't sit well in those circles. Before he could say more, I cut in, making my decision clear. I would resign. It was the only way to prevent the fallout from spreading to others. Walker pushed back, but I wouldn't budge. My career had already been overshadowed by this mess, and it was better to step away than drag my service and reputation through the mud. The pause on his end told me he understood, though he didn't like it. With a tinge of regret in his voice, he promised to push for an honorable discharge, acknowledging my years of dedicated service. I thanked him genuinely before the line went dead. Staring at the phone, I felt the weight of finality settle over me. My military career, something I'd poured my life into, was over. That evening, a knock at the door broke my thoughts. Mario strolled in, grinning like he'd just hit the jackpot. He carried a flash drive in one hand and his laptop under his arm. With his signature swagger, he declared he had everything I'd asked for, and then some. Curious but cautious, I watched as he plugged the drive into his laptop. The screen lit up, folders neatly labeled, and Mario's grin widened as he began to explain. There was enough incriminating material here to destroy both Linda and her lover, Luke. Explicit texts, emails, and videos painted a sordid picture of their relationship. But that wasn't all. Mario revealed something darker: Luke's involvement in pills trafficking. He wasn't a kingpin, but he was a transporter, moving small quantities for a network that included cops and judges. That kind of protection explained why he'd managed to operate under the radar for so long. I leaned in, absorbing every detail as Mario broke it down. He had spent hours organizing the data into folders, one for the affair, another for the pills dealings, and a third for everything else. I thanked him for his thoroughness, and he assured me that everything was securely backed up in multiple locations. He handed me the password, a complex mix of symbols and letters, urging me to memorize it and destroy the paper. As I held the key to their destruction in my hands, Mario's parting words echoed in my mind. This information was dynamite. He was right. I knew it. And I also knew exactly how I would use it. Meanwhile, at the house, Linda's frustration boiled over. She paced the living room, her anger sharp and vocal as she ranted about being forced out. To her, this was an unforgivable betrayal, and she didn't bother hiding her disdain for my mother, who owned the property. Luke, ever the calm opportunist, leaned back and shrugged off her tirade. He assured her they'd find a way to fix things. When she snapped at him for his nonchalance, he simply smirked and pulled out his phone. His tone turned colder as he told her not to worry. The problem would be dealt with soon. Linda froze, her anger giving way to confusion as she pressed him for an explanation. Luke avoided specifics, brushing off her questions as he scrolled through his contacts. Walking to a family photo of me and my mother, he glanced at it before dialing. When the call connected, his voice dropped, and he spoke in code. It was clear he was giving someone instructions, details about what he called a cleanup. After sending a text, presumably with my mother's picture, Luke returned to the living room, his smirk intact. Linda's suspicion deepened, but he brushed it off again, telling her it was handled. Her unease was evident, but Luke's confidence was unwavering. He leaned back, relaxed, while Linda stood frozen, unsure of what she'd just witnessed. As much as she hated my mother, something about Luke's calm promise unsettled her. Mario's surveillance system detected a critical phone call through its keyword algorithm. The device began to beep, prompting Mario to investigate. Realizing the severity of what he'd intercepted, he grabbed his laptop and quickly brought it to where I was sitting with Vince. He showed us a recorded phone call extracted from Luke's device. The audio revealed Luke discussing my mother, Michelle Morgan, by name. He mentioned sending her photo to someone. It became instantly clear. Luke wasn't bluffing. He had taken steps to target my mother. Mario confirmed the photo had been sent to a known criminal, making the threat disturbingly real. The weight of the situation hit hard. Vince immediately recognized the urgency, stating the need for fast action to protect my mother. Mario was already tracking the recipient of the call, working as quickly as possible, but time wasn't on our side. Without hesitation, I armed myself and prepared to act. Vince instinctively reached for his radio to alert his department, but I stopped him. Knowing Luke's influence extended to local law enforcement, we couldn't risk involving compromised officers. Vince understood the danger and agreed to handle it independently. Together, we raced to my mother's house. Though the drive was only minutes long, every second felt excruciating. When we arrived, we parked a few houses away to remain unnoticed. I called my mother, instructing her to secure the doors, avoid answering for anyone, and immediately contact emergency services to report an attempted break-in. My mother, quick-witted and composed, assured me she understood before ending the call. From our concealed position, we watched as a figure approached the house. The man moved deliberately, slipping into the shadows near the front entrance. Vince's radio crackled with a report of a potential break-in at the address. As the nearest officer on duty, Vince responded and drove to the house, pulling into the driveway without activating his siren to avoid tipping off the intruder. Before exiting the vehicle, Vince made it clear I was to stay behind. He activated his body camera and proceeded toward the house. From inside the car, I could hear his commanding voice ordering the suspect to disarm. Moments later, a chaotic scuffle ensued. Furniture toppled, and 3 sharp cracks shattered the stillness of the neighborhood. My heart pounded as I gripped the edge of the seat, straining to see through the dim light. Vince emerged from the house a short time later, calm and collected. He reported over the radio that the armed suspect had been neutralized and requested medical support. Returning to the car, he conveyed the situation with a measured demeanor, confirming the threat had been eliminated. Relief washed over me, though the gravity of what had happened lingered heavily. Later that evening, we regrouped to assess the broader situation. Vince emphasized the importance of swiftly dismantling Luke's network before they could strike again. Chuck, who had been monitoring Luke's activities, provided key details about an upcoming pills delivery. In 3 days, Luke was set to transport a package from a downtown pickup point to a contact on Maple Drive. Chuck revealed that this contact was the same individual who had betrayed his previous operation to law enforcement. With this knowledge, Chuck had been tracking Luke and his associates, waiting for an opportunity to expose them. He outlined the importance of intercepting this delivery, explaining that doing so would disrupt their entire operation. The team agreed that the plan required precision and urgency. Chuck's detailed intel and Vince's strategic oversight made it clear we had one opportunity to get this right. For me, the stakes were deeply personal. Luke had crossed every line, and this was our chance to bring him and his criminal dealings to an end. I waited in my car, parked discreetly just off the main road, my eyes fixed on every passing vehicle. Everything hinged on this moment. Chuck had laid out the route Luke would take, and all the preparations were in place. My pulse quickened as I scanned the road, ready to act. Soon, I spotted it, a car matching Chuck's description. My grip tightened on my phone as I made the call, delivering the signal to Vince. Moments later, the roar of Vince's engine cut through the stillness as his car surged forward, its sirens screaming. I watched as Luke's car approached, and Vince gave chase, the pursuit quickly escalating. Luke's car accelerated, the sound of its tires gripping the asphalt barely audible over the wail of the sirens. Vince stayed close, refusing to let him escape. The situation took a sudden, violent turn. Luke's car swerved, its tires screeching before losing control entirely. It spun wildly, fishtailing before skidding off the road. My breath caught as I watched the car flip repeatedly. One roll, then another and another, until it came to rest on its side, a mangled heap of metal and shattered glass. I slammed my car into gear and sped toward the wreck, my chest pounding. Arriving first on the scene, I jumped out and raced to the vehicle. The destruction was worse up close. Glass scattered everywhere. The frame crumpled beyond recognition. Vince was already there, wrenching the door open with focused determination. He worked quickly, pulling the driver free and dragging them to safety. But as I looked closer, my stomach dropped. The driver wasn't Luke. It was his son, Alistair. The boy, no older than 19, was pale and bleeding profusely. Vince moved with urgency, calling for medics as he tried to stabilize him. But it was clear Alistair's condition was dire. His breaths were shallow, and his unfocused eyes hinted at the inevitable. My chest tightened as I realized there was nothing anyone could do. By the time the paramedics arrived, Alistair was gone. Later, I stood across the street from the police station, watching as Luke walked out on bail. His smug demeanor only fueled my anger. He shamelessly shifted the blame onto his dead son, claiming ignorance of the pills in the car. His brazenness was infuriating, but it was his indifference to Alistair's death that made my rage boil. Luke had lost his son, yet he treated it as nothing more than an inconvenience. As he left the station, his eyes met mine across the crowd. He didn't seem surprised to see me there, and his expression shifted to a confident smirk as he approached. He stopped in front of me, his posture radiating arrogance. My voice was low and sharp as I confronted him, warning him of the consequences of his actions. For the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes, though he quickly masked it. Stepping closer, I left him with a final warning, one that hung heavily in the air. This wasn't over. My thoughts drifted to my own son, Oscar, who I hadn't seen in months. Linda had made sure to sever any line of communication, leaving me completely in the dark about his well-being. The helplessness gnawed at me daily, the uncertainty eating away at my resolve. Desperate for answers, I confided in Vince, recounting my confrontation with Luke and my fears for Oscar's safety. Vince listened intently, his expression hardening with every word. When I finished, he spoke with quiet determination, vowing to end the chaos once and for all. He wasted no time, making calls to set things in motion. His first call was to Nate, tasking him with tracking Oscar. Vince insisted on a cautious approach, emphasizing the importance of keeping the search discreet to avoid drawing attention. Protecting Oscar was the top priority. Next, Vince contacted Mario, instructing him to compile every piece of evidence against Luke, the corrupt officers, and the compromised judges. The files were to be sent directly to the FBI and media outlets, ensuring the truth would come to light. There would be no more hiding or protecting Luke's criminal network. Finally, Vince reached out to Chuck. The plan was clear. Pills would be planted in Linda's car. It wasn't a decision that required discussion. Vince knew it was the leverage needed to force her hand. The final step was to involve Child Protective Services. If there was any hope of protecting Oscar and putting an end to the chaos, This was the way forward. Every move Vince made was calculated, designed to dismantle Luke's web of lies and ensure justice was served. The morning began with a call from Vince, his voice calm but purposeful as he informed me the plan was underway. Chuck and Nate were tailing Linda as she went about her routine, every movement carefully tracked. For me, the hours dragged on endlessly as I waited for news, hoping against hope that this would bring me closer to Oscar. Finally, my phone buzzed, snapping me out of my restless thoughts. Linda had arrived at a house on Pine Cove, Vince explained. Chuck and Nate had spotted her going inside, and with her was Oscar. The mention of my son's name sent a surge of adrenaline through me. After months of agony and uncertainty, Oscar was within reach. Every instinct screamed at me to rush to that house, to take him back right then and there. But I couldn't jeopardize the operation. Vince and his team had a plan, and I needed to trust them. Outside the house, Chuck and Nate observed Linda disappear through the front door, oblivious to their presence. Nate approached her car with an air of nonchalance, while Chuck followed closely, clutching a small bag that would ultimately seal her fate. In a practiced motion, Nate ensured the area was clear before gently opening the car door. Chuck placed the bag strategically, somewhere discreet but impossible to miss during a thorough search. The two walked away without looking back, their movements smooth and calculated. Moments later, Nate dialed emergency from a burner phone, reporting the suspicious vehicle. Vince was the closest officer to respond. His calm and commanding presence would have been enough to disarm any situation, and I imagined him stepping into action with his usual efficiency. He alerted both Child Protective Services and dispatch, ensuring that every angle was covered. Then, armed with paperwork to maintain appearances, Vince entered the house. Inside, Linda's arrogant demeanor likely faltered as Vince informed her of her arrest. I could picture her initial defiance, the sneer on her face, twisting into disbelief as the reality of the situation set in. But Vince wasn't the type to tolerate resistance, and the arrest was swift and methodical. Meanwhile, agents from Child Protective Services moved past Linda's protests to assess the environment and, ultimately, Oscar's safety. The moment I'd been waiting for finally came when Vince called to tell me that Oscar was safe and en route to me. Relief and anger clashed inside me as I gripped the phone, every emotion I'd suppressed over the past months threatening to overwhelm me. When the agents brought Oscar to me, the sight of him nearly undid me. His expression held confusion and fear, but when his eyes met mine, recognition flickered there. The moment they handed him over, I held him close, the weight of months of separation dissolving into relief. Later, back at my mom's house, I pieced together why Linda and Luke had hidden Oscar in that house. They were trying to alienate him from me, laying the groundwork to claim I'd abandoned him. The restraining order and my time in jail had given them the opportunity to create a false narrative, one they hoped would hold up in court. But none of that mattered now. Oscar was with me, and I wasn't letting him go. That evening, while Oscar settled into the safety of my mom's home, Vince called with grim news. Linda had made bail. The timing sent a chill through me, but Vince reassured me that the FBI had received the incriminating documents and was already moving forward. The relief was short-lived. Later that night, Vince called again, his voice tense with urgency. Mario had intercepted a call revealing that Linda and Luke were headed to my mother's house. Vince and his team were en route, but until they arrived, it was up to me to keep Oscar safe. I instructed my mom to take Oscar upstairs to the main bedroom, lock the door, and open it for no one but me or Vince. Her pale but determined face reassured me as she ushered Oscar away. Alone in the darkened living room, I turned off every light, Glock in hand, and waited. The minutes dragged like hours, my senses heightened with every faint sound. The kitchen doorknob jiggled, breaking the silence. My pulse quickened as I moved behind the dining table, crouching low. The door creaked open, revealing the bulky silhouette of Luke. He stepped inside, a rifle clutched in his hands, his presence menacing. Moments later, Linda followed, her tool glinting faintly in the dim light. Their desperation was evident. Choosing this reckless, armed confrontation over a legal battle spoke to their desperation and arrogance. I crept forward, each step deliberate and silent. When I was directly behind Luke, I reached for the light switch and flicked it on. The room flooded with light, and in one swift motion, I pressed the barrel of my Glock against Luke's neck. My voice was steady, low, and unyielding as I issued my ultimatum. The tension in the room was palpable, but I wasn't backing down. Luke's rifle wavered slightly in his grip, and for the first time, I saw hesitation in his eyes. This time, I wasn't letting him or anyone else hurt my family. Luke froze, his face draining of color as his wide eyes locked onto mine. He must have seen it, the unwavering resolve, the fury burning just beneath the surface, and the complete absence of fear. His grip loosened, and the rifle slipped from his hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Linda still holding her tool, her hands trembling as she aimed it at me. I turned my attention to her, my voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Her knuckles whitened as she hesitated, fear and defiance warring in her expression. After what felt like an eternity, she finally let the Colt drop, nudging it toward me with a hesitant push of her foot. I kept my focus locked on them, scooping up the tool while keeping the rifle in sight. With both tools in my hands, I demanded answers. Luke remained silent, his jaw clenched tight, but Linda's ragged breaths and darting eyes gave her away. It didn't take long before Luke finally spoke, his words chilling in their bluntness. He admitted they had come to liquidate me and my mother, planning to burn the house down to cover their tracks. His tone was cold, almost casual, as if it were a simple task to erase lives. The rage building in me was almost too much to contain. I glared at them, disbelief mingling with fury. When Linda's composure cracked, she erupted into a stream of venomous threats. She swore she'd take Oscar from me in court, painting me as an unfit father. Her words were sharp, laced with malice, but it was her final accusation that struck the hardest, blaming me for Alistair's death. Luke, calmer but no less dangerous, stepped forward, his tone laced with malice. He vowed I'd know the pain of losing a son, his words icy and deliberate. The audacity of their threats ignited something deep and primal within me. My vision narrowed, the sound of their voices fading into a low hum as everything else fell away. Lowering the tool, I reached for the rifle Luke had dropped. Its weight felt heavy and final as I checked the chamber. 2 shells loaded and ready. I snapped it shut, the sound echoing in the tense silence. Linda's face went pale and her breaths came in sharp gasps. Luke stood frozen, his false bravado stripped away and replaced by unmistakable fear. My voice was calm, measured as I locked eyes with Luke. He had come here to take everything from me, but the tables had turned. With unflinching precision, I raised the rifle and fired. The blast was deafening, smoke and burnt residue filling the air. Luke's body crumpled, the force of the impact throwing him back. He lay motionless, his chest torn open, the life gone from his eyes. I turned to Linda, her tear-streaked face a mask of terror. She shook her head, muttering desperate pleas that grew louder as panic overtook her. I took a step closer, the rifle steady in my grip. Her cries fell on deaf ears. This wasn't about mercy. It was about justice for what they'd done to my family. Her words blended into a distant echo as I pulled the trigger again. Another deafening blast, then silence. Sinking onto the couch, I rested the rifle across my lap. The acrid scent of smoke lingered in the air, mingling with the ringing in my ears. My thoughts raced, a storm of emotions threatening to pull me under. The creak of the front door snapped me back to reality. Vince stepped inside, his sharp eyes taking in the scene, the bodies, the shattered quiet of my home. Without hesitation, he headed upstairs to check on my mom and Oscar. Moments later, he escorted them outside, shielding Oscar's eyes from the chaos. When he returned, his expression was a mix of grim resolve and faint satisfaction. He stood over me, his voice low but steady as he assured me the situation was under control. Vince made a few calls, summoning reinforcements to clean up the scene. While waiting, he shared updates. Judge Brenda Smith, who had been lenient with Luke's associates, was now in custody. The noose was tightening around the remaining corrupt figures in Luke's network. Each piece falling into place brought a semblance of order to the chaos. Placing a firm hand on my shoulder, Vince offered a grim reminder. They came into your home with the intent to liquidate. You're a Navy SEAL. You defended yourself, took control of the tool, and neutralized the threat. That's the report, and you stick to it. Not a word more, not a word less. I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. Vince was my anchor in this storm, his presence a steady reminder that justice, however messy, had finally been served. A few minutes later, I found myself stepping into the police station, every detail around me feeling distant and unreal, as if I were moving through a haze. Vince handed me a stack of papers to sign, and I barely glanced at them, trusting him to handle the particulars. My hand moved mechanically, my thoughts elsewhere. The next thing I knew, I was back in Vince's car, the low hum of the engine filling the silence between us. He didn't say much on the drive, only giving me a glance now and then. When we reached my house, he finally spoke, his tone steady and firm. telling me to get some rest. I nodded, stepping out of the car. Vince waited until I was inside before pulling away. 2 weeks later, I received a call from my commanding officer. His voice was neutral, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. He informed me that an honorable discharge had been secured. It wasn't how I envisioned leaving the service, but I knew better than to protest. He asked me to come in to finalize the paperwork. Driving to the base one last time, I felt the bittersweet pull of familiarity. The hallways, once alive with purpose and camaraderie, now felt strangely hollow. Memories of shared hardships and victories flickered through my mind, mingling with the sting of recent events. In his office, my CO greeted me with his usual imposing presence, though there was something softer in his demeanor. As I signed the final documents, he watched me closely, arms crossed. When I finished, he spoke, his tone quieter than I'd ever heard it. He acknowledged the disruption my courtroom outburst had caused, admitting it had unsettled those in power. But he also shared that many had admired my actions, even if they couldn't say so openly. His words hit me differently, leaving me at a loss for a response. We shook hands, and I walked out, knowing it was the last time I'd see those walls. Outside, I headed toward my car, a swirl of relief and regret settling in my chest. One chapter of my life had ended, and another was waiting to begin. When I got home, Oscar was standing at the door, his face lighting up the second he saw me. He bolted toward me, wrapping his arms around my waist in a hug that drove away every dark thought. As I held him close, something small and energetic darted out from behind him. A German shepherd puppy, tail wagging so furiously it was a blur. The pup bounded up to me, leaping and licking my hands with sloppy enthusiasm. Oscar's laugh was infectious, and I found myself laughing with him. When I asked where the little guy had come from, Oscar explained with a grin that Mario had dropped him off, claiming I needed a new partner. That evening, I met up with Nate, Mario, and Chuck at a bar. The four of us shared drinks, swapping stories and jabs, the tension of the past weeks finally giving way to laughter. The bar settled into its usual rhythm, the clink of glasses and hum of conversation, creating a rare sense of normalcy. We were halfway through another round when a shadow loomed over the table. Looking up, I recognized a towering figure immediately. It was Ralph, his broad shoulders practically blocking out the overhead light. His weathered face broke into a grin as he greeted me like a long-lost brother. The force of his hug nearly knocked the air out of me, but I didn't mind. Introducing him to the others, I explained Ralph's reputation as the Wrecker, a demolitions expert who had worked with SEAL teams countless times. The group sized him up with curiosity and respect as he sat down, the chair groaning under his weight. I slid a fresh beer across the table and we caught up briefly. Then Vince arrived, sliding into the seat next to me. He looked between us, asking if he'd missed anything. Ralph's face turned uncharacteristically serious. In a low voice, he told us about a Mexican pills lord known as the Soup Maker. His name alone silenced the table. Mario froze mid-sip, his usual smirk vanishing. Nate and Chuck exchanged grim looks, clearly recognizing the name. Vince looked puzzled, the only one out of the loop. Ralph explained he'd been tracking the Soup Maker for months and had followed him here. His voice was calm, but resolute, as he told us he wasn't looking for backup. He was looking for a team. He needed people he could trust to help him end the Soup Maker for good. The gravity of his words hung in the air, and I knew this wasn't just another mission. It was personal for Ralph. And now, it was personal for us too. As I watched Ralph outline the details of his mission, a quiet resolve settled over me. The room was heavy with tension, each of us processing what this meant. My gaze drifted to the frothy beer on the table, the condensation tracing slow paths down the glass, as if marking the fleeting moments of calm we had left. The Soup Maker. Even saying the name felt like invoking something ancient and unrelenting. Ralph's reputation preceded him. If he said this was serious, then it was. Yet a part of me, a part tempered by loss and betrayal, felt oddly at peace. This, at least, was a battle I could control. No blurred lines, no false allies, just a clear enemy and a shared purpose. Mario broke the silence first, his voice tinged with reluctant humor. You know, I just got comfortable, Ralph, and here you are dragging me back into the fire. He grinned, but his eyes betrayed his apprehension. Nate, ever the stoic, simply nodded. If Ralph says it's worth it, I'm in. No questions asked. Chuck hesitated, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by a pensive frown. I ain't built for heroics, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. But if it means putting this Soup Maker guy out of commission, count me in. Vince leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his calculating gaze locked on Ralph. You sure you want to go this route? You could pull in any number of teams. Why us? Ralph's reply was simple, but it hit home. Because I trust you, and trust is all that matters out there. As he spoke, I felt the familiar pull of duty, an instinct honed through years of service. It was a strange kind of gravity, drawing me toward action, even as part of me longed to stay anchored in the fragile peace I had built. I'm in, I said, my voice steady. All eyes turned to me. Not just because Ralph asked, but because I need this. I need to remember what it feels like to fight for something that matters. Ralph's eyes softened and he nodded. The room shifted, the unspoken bond between us solidifying. This wasn't just a team, it was a family, forged in the fires of shared pain and purpose. As the night wore on, plans began to form. Maps were drawn, routes were plotted, and roles were assigned. It felt like old times, the rhythm of preparation and anticipation rekindling something deep within me. Later, as I lay in bed, the weight of everything settled over me. The stakes were higher than ever, and the scars I carried, both visible and unseen, felt heavier in the quiet darkness. Yet for the first time in months, I felt a spark of hope. This was more than a mission. It was a chance to reclaim something I thought I'd lost, the belief that, no matter how broken the world might seem, there was always a way forward. And so, as the first light of dawn broke through the window, I rose with a newfound purpose. The fight ahead would be brutal, but it was a fight worth taking. For Ralph, for the team, and for the chance to finally put the past to rest. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about redemption, and I was ready.
Returning home from my trip was completely unexpected. I had originally planned to spend an extra day in Chicago, but my meetings finished earlier than expected. As I drove back, I felt relaxed, satisfied with having closed a major business deal. The familiar sights of the neighborhood gave me a sense of comfort, and I was excited to surprise my wife, Sonia. Little did I know, my life was about to change dramatically. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw a car that I knew well, my father's. It didn't seem odd at first, since I often asked him to check on Sonia when I was away. But as I stepped inside, the sounds coming from the upstairs bedroom immediately shattered my calm. In a moment, I understood that the favor I'd asked of him had turned into something far beyond what I'd imagined. Before they noticed me, I quickly snapped 7 pictures. David jumped off the bed, demanding I hand over the camera. Without a second thought, I reached behind and pulled out the tool I had concealed in my waistband, pointing it right at him. He froze, smirking as he said, "You won't do it." I aimed at his leg and pulled the trigger, forcing him to the ground in agony. "You did that to your own brother?" my father said in disbelief. "The only reason I'm not going to end you is because I don't want to deprive Mom of the pleasure of cutting your Johnson off." Sonia, my wife of 9 years, sat clutching a pillow, crying, "Please don't liquidate me." I ignored her and told my father, "I'm not sure what angers me more, your affair with my wife or the fact that you've done something with her she never allowed me to. Either way, I quit. You'll need to update the sign on the building from Dawson and Sons to Dawson and Son, or maybe just Dawson if that idiot bleeds out. No one seems to be rushing to call 911 for him." As I turned to leave, he called after me, "Where are you going?" "Over to your place to share my pictures with Mom." "Wait, Bobby, we need to talk." "You may feel the need to talk, but I sure don't feel the need to listen." As I walked out the door, he was yelling, "Bobby, for God's sake, talk to me." I ignored him, and as I reached my car, I shot out the right front and rear tires of his car with the 1911. Didn't want him speeding off to beat me to Mom. After driving a couple of blocks, I pulled over and called my mom. I preferred to give her the photos in person, but once 911 was called for David, the cops would likely be looking for me at my parents' house. When she answered, I told her I was sending her some pictures she needed to see before Dad got home. She had questions, but I told her I'd call later. I checked the time, still had an hour before the bank closed. As I drove over, I thought about what had just happened. I'd come home a day early from a business trip and saw my father's car in the driveway. I didn't think much of it since I always asked him to check on Sonia while I was away. Of course, when I said to see if she needed anything, I didn't mean what was actually happening. As soon as I walked through the front door, the noises from the bedroom made everything clear. I went to the den, grabbed my .45 from the lockbox and tucked it behind my belt just in case. Then I pulled out my phone, turned on the camera, and headed for the bedroom. Sonia was on her knees with David, while my father was doing something she'd never let me do. Suddenly, it made sense why I was the only son who got sent away on business trips while David stayed behind. At the bank, I closed out all our accounts and cashed the 6 certificates of deposit from the safe deposit box. I walked out with just over $18,000. Then I went to the bank where the company's accounts were held and withdrew $15,000. Call it severance, though some might say it was embezzlement. But who's worried about that when I'm likely already wanted for assault with a deadly Colt? Before leaving town, I called David's wife, Cindy. She was on her way to the hospital to see David, and as soon as she heard my voice, she asked, "Bob, what is going on? Your dad said you shot Dave." I came home early and caught him with Sonia. I took pictures. When he tried to grab the camera, I shot him in the leg. I'm sending the pictures to your email. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you deserve to know. Take care. I hung up and drove out of town. 5 miles down the road, I pulled over, removed the battery from my phone to avoid being tracked, and kept driving. I'd get a throwaway phone later to keep the pictures safe. 2 days later, I arrived in Colorado and checked into a motel outside Denver. Out of curiosity, I called home using a track phone I picked up in Kansas. My father, if he wasn't dead, would still be at work. Mom answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello? Hey, Mom. Bob? Where are you?" Knowing the cops were probably looking for me, I lied. "Almost to New York." "Why in the world are you going there?" "Trying to put distance between me, Sonia, David, and Dad." "Did you really have to shoot David? He'll never walk right again." "He's lucky I didn't eliminate him. I figured Cindy might want that honor." "She didn't liquidate him, but she did kick him out. That was harsh, sending her those pictures. I thought she had a right to know who she was married to. Same reason I sent them to you." "It wasn't a surprise. I've known your dad's had affairs, but I overlooked it to keep the family together. But Sonia? I couldn't ignore that. I kicked him out and filed for divorce the next day. You should come back. I'll end up with most of the business and I need your help." "How do you figure that?" "The business was started with money from my inheritance. My attorney says I'll get 60 to 65%, which will give me control. I'm going to need you." "Are you going to run it as Dawson and Sons or Dawson and Son, with the son being me?" "Don't be like that, Bob. Dave is my son, too." "If he's there, I won't be. I'll want to hurt him. You need to call Sonia. She wants to talk. But I don't want to talk to her, so I'll pass." "You'll have to eventually. Divorce almost always requires some counseling." "What divorce? I walked away from her. I'm not wasting money on a lawyer. Someday she'll want to be free and can handle it herself." "Do you have to call her names? What else would you call a married woman having intimacy with 2 men on her husband's bed? Ho is pretty mild. Anyway, I just called to let you know I'm okay. I'll check in once a week. Love you. Bye." Nothing was mentioned about the $15,000 I took from the company account, so I guess they hadn't noticed yet. I spent a week in Denver exploring, and while it was a nice place and the mountains had some appeal, I decided it was too soon to settle down. I needed to keep moving to make it harder for anyone to track me. I stopped in Castle Rock for lunch at Tricocci's and called Mom to check in, but she didn't answer. On a whim, I called the business. "Good morning, Dawson and Sons. How may I direct your call?" "Morning, Glenda. Is my mom there?" "Bobby, where are you? This place is falling apart. You need to come back." "No, thanks. Is my mom there?" "I'll transfer you." "Bob? Morning, Mom. How's New York?" "I'm already past that. I didn't like it much. I'm in Georgia now, thinking about settling here." "You need to come home." "I can't. I need time to process everything. If I came back now, I might do something I'd regret." "Would you at least call Sonia? She's not doing well. She's in this mess because of her choices. She can fix it. I'm worried she might hurt herself." "Like what? Self-destruction?" "It's possible." "Well, that'd be quicker than a divorce." "That's cold." "Cold? Try coming home to what I did. Sonia's lucky I didn't shoot her, too." "Don't mention her name to me again. I didn't raise you like this." "Mom, do you remember who she was with? Talk later." I hung up, nearly throwing the phone in frustration. I couldn't believe she was still defending Sonia. I left Castle Rock and drove south on I-25. I had no clear destination, but for now, just moving was enough. Around 2, I stopped at a truck stop for gas and a quick meal. As I parked, there was a tap on my window. I looked over and saw a young woman standing there. I rolled down the window. "Yes?" She hesitated, glancing around nervously, then finally spoke. "I'm hungry. I haven't eaten in 2 days. I'll give you a head for $20. I could tell she wasn't a professional. $20 wasn't what a pro would ask for. I hit the button to roll up the window, and she looked devastated, thinking I was rejecting her. But I got out of the car, locked it, and said, "Come on, let's get you something to eat." I offered her my hand, and after some hesitation, she took it. "I'm Bob. What's your name?" "Maggie. Maggie Toman." We didn't speak again until we were sitting in a booth inside. "I know it's not my business, but what brings you to a truck stop like this?" Before she could answer, the waitress came to take our order. Maggie asked for a burger and fries. "That won't fill you up. Let's both get the steak dinner." Once the waitress left, I asked Maggie for her story. She hesitated, but eventually opened up. She was running from an abusive stepfather and a mother too drunk to care. Her stepdad had been clear about his intentions, and her mom was too pilled up to stop him. So Maggie took what money she could and left while they slept. Her plan was to get to Houston, where her sister lived. She bought a bus ticket to Denver, intending to take a train to Houston. But on the bus, she fell asleep, and when she woke up in Denver, her purse was gone, stolen before anyone noticed. I asked why her stepfather hadn't acted on his threats, and she explained he didn't want to go to jail for being with a minor. "A minor? How old are you?" "I turned 18 the day I ran." I was surprised. "I thought you were older. Why didn't you just report him?" "I tried, but he said it would be his word against mine, and my mom would back him because she depended on him for pills." I wasn't willing to take that chance. We ate our meals in silence, and afterward, she declined dessert. Then she said, "Let's go to your car so I can fulfill my part of the deal and get back to hitchhiking." While eating, I had been thinking about her situation and made up my mind. I wasn't headed anywhere specific, just trying to get away from what happened at home. After paying the bill, we went to my car. I opened the door for her and got in. She said, "I don't know if I'll be any good at this. I've never done it before." "It doesn't matter. Today's your lucky day. I'm not going to take you up on your offer. I'd feel like a creep if I did. Your second bit of luck is I'm heading to Houston, so you already have your ride. Buckle up." I started the car. I had heard stories about hitchhikers hijacking rides, but I wasn't too worried about Maggie. If she did try anything, the 1911 in the door pocket was within easy reach. I drove until 8 p.m. and stopped at a truck stop for gas. I asked if she was hungry, and she said yes, so we went inside for another meal. While waiting, I asked, "Does your sister know you're coming?" "No, I was going to call her in Denver, but my phone was stolen with my purse." I handed her my phone. "Call her." I left her alone to make the call, wandering the store and picking up a road atlas. When I came back, the food had arrived, and Maggie had finished her call. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, my sister's excited to see me. She told me Mom called her asking if she had heard from me. Mom even sounded sober for once. Kathy said if I call, I should talk to her." I pointed to my phone. "Go ahead." "Not yet. Maybe in a couple of days." Back on the road, Maggie asked, "You know my story. What's yours?" I told her. "Your father and brother? And you didn't liquidate them? What about your wife?" "Didn't ask. I just left. Maybe she was being forced or blackmailed." "She wasn't forced. I could tell by how she acted. And if it was blackmail, she could have told me, and we'd have dealt with it together. I still think you should know why. Maybe someday, but not now." We stopped at a Days Inn. I was going to book 2 rooms, but Maggie said she didn't want to stay alone, so I got a room with twin beds. She went to shower, and I got into bed. When she came out, she glanced at the other bed, then crawled into mine. I wasn't comfortable with that. "The other bed is yours." "I don't want to be there. I want to be here." She touched me, her hand moving down my body. I grabbed her wrist. "No, but I want to. I owe you." "No, you don't. You were desperate when you made that offer. I'm just glad I could help. I'm not doing it to pay a debt. I want to thank you for being kind to me. I want to do this because I want to. Is that okay?" I'm not a saint, and she was attractive. I didn't owe Sonia anything, so I let go of Maggie's wrist. She took that as a green light. She pushed the covers aside, slid down, and said, "I've never done this before, but I've seen it in videos. Let me know if I'm doing it wrong." Usually I'd warn Sonia when I was about to finish, but I didn't tell Maggie. I thought I was doing her a favor, teaching her something future boyfriends would appreciate. "My friends warned me it would hurt at first, but improve over time," she said. "How long until we can go again?" she asked. I told her it would be a little while, but we needed to clean up the mess first. She was shocked at the mess, worried about the motel staff, and hurried to clean up before suggesting we continue. However, I reminded her we needed to head to Houston soon. She wasn't in a rush, preferring to stay and repeat the experience while it was fresh in her mind. I agreed, thinking it might be a while before I had another opportunity like this. We stayed until checkout, trying different positions and experimenting with things she'd seen online. I even got the chance to try something I'd always wanted, but past partners hadn't allowed. After multiple rounds, we cleaned up and hit the road again, Though late, we stopped for the night before reaching her sister's. The next morning, she was eager to continue, and we didn't arrive at her sister's until late afternoon. She asked if I was coming in, but I knew we didn't have a future together, so I told her I had to get going. She seemed disappointed, but thanked me with a smile, and I watched her go inside. Later, as I checked into a motel, I wondered what to do next, and decided to visit the Alamo. On the way, I picked up a hitchhiking couple, but things took a dangerous turn when the man pulled a knife on me. As he demanded my car and money, I calmly reached for my .45, ready to respond. I had the Colt in my hand, but before I could react, the woman in the back seat looped her purse straps around the man's neck and yanked hard. He dropped the knife, struggling to breathe. I put the tool away, pulled over, and got out. After opening the passenger door, I told her to let go, and she did. The man slumped unconscious, so I dragged him out of the car, checked his pulse, and undressed him. I rolled him into the ditch and threw his clothes in the trunk. Then I asked the woman, Sarah, if she wanted to sit up front. "You're not going to leave me here?" she asked. "Why would I?" I replied. "You took my side." She shrugged, moved to the front seat, and I turned the car around, heading back toward San Antonio. Once we were on our way, I asked, "So, you weren't involved with him?" "No, I've only known him for an hour. My car broke down, and he stopped to offer a ride. He expected something in return, but I was just playing along until I could ditch him. When he pulled that knife, I wasn't about to be part of it, so I used the straps." "An hour? Why didn't he drop you off to get your car fixed?" "It wasn't mine. It's my husband's company car, and I'm sure he's already reported it stolen. I was planning to ditch it at the airport in San Antonio and fly to San Diego." She must have noticed the look on my face, so she explained, "I caught my husband cheating and slept with his brother to get back at him. I told him we were even, but he called me a hoe and said, 'Men can cheat, but women can't.' That night, I took the car and left. In the morning, I cleared out our bank accounts and hit the road." I laughed. She asked why, and I told her it was ironic because our situations were similar. After I shared my story, she said, "What are the odds? I assume you're not getting back with her." "Not a chance." She was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Why do people like that even get married? If they're going to cheat, why not stay single?" "No idea." I didn't stick around long enough to ask. Changing the subject, I asked, "What's in San Diego?" "My family. I'll stay with them until I get back on my feet." "You in a hurry to get there?" "Not really." "Why?" I explained that I was on my way to see the Alamo, and after that, I had no specific plans. I suggested tagging along to San Diego since I'd never been there. She smiled. "Why not? I'd save on airfare, and Mom isn't expecting me at a specific time. Count me in." When we arrived in San Antonio, we got directions to the Alamo, had lunch, and then took the tour. Afterward, we explored the Riverwalk. I picked up a road atlas at a bookstore, and over dinner, I checked the best route to San Diego. It's about 1,500 miles, so it'll take us around 2.5 days. The book says 24 hours straight, but I've been taking my time driving around 600 or 700 miles a day. "Do you want to start driving tonight for a few hours or leave in the morning?" "I'm in no rush. Tomorrow works for me." After dinner, I found a motel, and as we pulled in, I asked, "Separate rooms, or will one with twin beds work?" She grinned and said, "One room, one bed. I'm not done getting even with my soon-to-be ex yet." I smiled back. "You got it." Her husband was a fool to cheat on her. She was incredible. She was nearly insatiable, and once we started, she didn't want to stop. We had lovemaking in different positions, and after we were both completely spent, we showered together, which led to another round. By the time we finished, I was exhausted. It took us 6 days to drive the 1,500 miles to San Diego. We arrived at 6 p.m. on a Saturday, and I asked for an address. "Not tonight," she replied. "I want one more night with you before we part ways. I'll call my mom and let her know we'll be there tomorrow." After I checked us into a motel, she called her mom while I took a shower for privacy. I wasn't surprised when she joined me. Things heated up, as expected, leading from the shower to the bed. She looked at me and asked, "Ever tried bum stuff?" "I have." "I haven't. My husband always wanted to, but I thought it was too much. But now, I want to try it with you." "Why now?" "I want to give you something I never gave him. Someday, I'll tell him how much I enjoyed it." "What if you don't like it?" "Doesn't matter. I won't tell him that." She did enjoy it and wanted to do it again and again. We arrived at her mom's house at 6 p.m. the next day. She looked at me with a sad smile. "I'd invite you in, but it'd be awkward. Mom said my husband is here to ask me to take him back. Will you?" "I don't know. I do love him, but I left because he wanted a divorce. If you want me to stay, I will." Tempting, but it's too soon for me to decide. She handed me her number, kissed me deeply, and left. I was tempted to call her back, but instead I drove away. Later, I checked into a motel and had a bite to eat. I called my mom, but my dad answered, so I hung up. It was odd because Mom had said she kicked him out. On a whim, I called Cindy. "Hey, Cindy, it's Bob. What's going on? I called home and my dad answered. Your mom let him come by to get his stuff. She's staying with your aunt for the weekend. How about you?" "I filed for divorce. Dave's gonna fight it, but I told him to waste his money if he wants." "Did you know he and your dad moved in with Sonia?" "I didn't. But I don't care. They all deserve each other." "Amen to that. When are you coming back?" "I'm not. I don't want to end up in jail." "Why would you say that?" "Because I shot David." "No, you didn't." "Of course I did. Your dad and Dave told the police it was an accident. They said Dave shot himself while showing Sonia how to use that Colt you bought her." "How did they pull that off?" "Your dad fired a shot in the yard, then staged the scene. The police believed it." "And what about the tires I shot out on my dad's car?" "I don't think the cops ever found out." "Why did they cover it up?" "Your dad said the business couldn't handle a scandal. Dave wasn't happy. He wanted to nail you, but your dad stopped him." "I'm still not coming back, at least not soon. If I see my dad or Dave, I'd want to hurt them." "Your mom needs you, Rob. She needs help with the business. She's got David. He's useless. Now that your dad's not covering for him, it's obvious." She was right, I knew it, but I didn't care. If my dad didn't, why should I? "How are you holding up? You know how I am. You're probably dealing with the same mess." "I'm sorry for dragging you into this." "I'm glad you did. You saved me from becoming a single mom." After the call, I thought about what Cindy said. It didn't match up with what my mom told me. According to her, Sonia was desperate to talk to me, maybe even destructive. But how could she be, while letting those two losers move in? I shook my head. Unbelievable. I woke up to the sound of yelling outside. Looking out the window, I saw a man push a woman hard enough to knock her to the ground before speeding off in a car. I quickly pulled on my pants and went outside. "Are you okay?" I asked, as she sat there crying. "No, I'm not," she sobbed. I helped her up and asked which room was hers. "We don't have one. We already checked out. You can wait in my room if you want. He's not coming back. I'm stuck." "It can't be that bad. I've only got $40 and I need to get back to St. Paul." "St. Paul, Minnesota?" "Yeah." I paused, thinking this might be her lucky day. "I'm heading to Minneapolis, which is close. Want a ride?" "Seriously?" she asked, surprised. "Yeah. How do I know you're not dangerous?" "Take my driver's license and car plate number. Call someone and give them the info. If anything happens, they'll know who to find." After a moment, she asked, "Are you going to try anything?" "I won't, but if you do, I won't stop you." "Pinky swear," she said, holding out her hand. We hooked fingers and I noticed her wedding ring. I figured I'd learn her story on the drive to St. Paul. I introduced myself as Bob, and she told me her name was Mary. We grabbed breakfast at IHOP, where she told me a bit about herself. She was 31, married with no kids, and worked as an office manager at a law firm in St. Paul. "Was that your husband who left you?" I asked. It was, "Are you sure he won't come back?" His last words were, "Forget you. I'm glad he's gone. I'll be filing for divorce as soon as I get back." I was curious but didn't press. I knew I'd hear more during the 2,000-mile drive. She asked about my story, and I shared it, receiving a similar reaction to what I'd heard before. "Your father and brother did all that, and you didn't eliminate them. They weren't worth it. Are you going to divorce your wife?" I'm still undecided. "Seriously considering staying with her?" "No, but I might just wait and let her be the one to file. No sense in paying for it myself." After breakfast, we hit the road. I asked if she was in a rush to get home. "Not really," she said. 3 days sounds fine." We drove in silence for a while, with her reading a book and me humming along to oldies on the radio. A couple of hours later, she put her book down and said, "I feel like I need to tell you what happened." I turned off the radio and she started explaining how she and her husband, Jake, had gone to Mexico and met up with old friends. One night, she drank too much and passed out. When she came to, she saw Jake with another woman, Nancy. The next morning, unsure if what she'd seen was real, she didn't mention it. But on the drive home, she brought it up, and Jake didn't deny it. Instead, he attacked her verbally, blaming her for not being good in bed. When she said she'd talk to a lawyer, he left her at the motel. We stopped for the night, and I asked if she wanted separate rooms. "No," she said. "I trust you." I wasn't sure I could trust myself. She was a beautiful woman. The room had twin beds. After she showered, I was already in bed. I said, "Good night," turned over, and fell asleep. I'd left a wake-up call at the desk, and when the phone rang at 7 in the morning, it woke me up. It woke Mary up as well, and she jumped out of bed, running to the bathroom. I sat on the side of the bed, watching her go, stunned. The toilet flushed, and she came back into the room. My body reacted instantly as she returned, and she noticed the look on my face before saying, "I should have waited for you to use the bathroom and put something on after. I'm just used to sleeping unclothed and walking around in the morning without thinking how it might affect you. I wish I had a camera to capture the moment of being in the presence of a goddess," I joked. She laughed and started getting dressed while I went to the bathroom. We had breakfast at the village inn, then hit the road. We didn't talk much during the drive. She read her book while I hummed to the music. We discussed our plans about our spouses during gas and lunch stops. She had a clear idea, but I was still undecided. That night, I booked another room with twin beds. Like before, I was already in bed when she came out of the bathroom. She glanced at the other bed and then at me. "Can I sleep with you tonight? I don't want to have sex, just need to be held. Is that okay?" I wasn't sure if I could control myself. I had promised not to make a move on her, but with her lying next to me, I wasn't confident I'd be able to. Still, I pulled back the covers and she climbed into bed next to me. "Just hold me," she said. I wrapped my arms around her and she pressed against me. She must have felt my hardness, but instead of pulling away, she shifted so I was nestled against her. It was the hardest temptation I've ever faced, but I managed to stay in control. I woke up with my arms around her, holding her close. As I tried to gently pull away, she woke up, patted my hand, and then got out of bed to head into the bathroom. "Over breakfast," she said. "I didn't think you could resist." "Resist what?" I asked, sleeping next to me, unclothed and not trying anything. Honestly, neither did I. We arrived in St. Paul around 5:30 in the afternoon. I asked for directions, and she eventually said, "Turn in here." "Here?" I asked, noticing the Best Western sign. "Yes, I want what I didn't get last night. I expected it and wanted it, but I didn't think you'd actually ignore an unclothed woman in your bed. I know you said you wouldn't make a move, but I didn't think you'd really hold back. Didn't you see me getting unclothed as a signal? No, you said you wanted to be held, and I believed you. Well, I'm coming after you now, and I'm not going to run." I couldn't understand why her husband cheated on her because she was incredible. She wore me out with her energy, wanting more after each round. No matter what she did, I couldn't keep up anymore. When I asked if she wanted to leave, she said, "No, I'm staying right here. I'm going to snuggle up to you and try for one more round in the morning." She cuddled up and we fell asleep together. In the morning, I woke up to her being very intimate with me. After breakfast, she gave me directions, and by noon, I arrived at a ranch-style house with a large front yard. She reached for the door and said, "Come on in." "I'm not sure I should," I replied. "Why not?" "I'm not great with confrontations." "Confrontations? Oh no, this is my sister's house, not Jake's. He's not welcome here." I went inside and met her sister Julia, her niece, and her niece's boyfriend. Mary explained what had happened in Mexico and San Diego, and Julia said, "I've always told you your husband was no good." During the conversation, it came up that I was from Michigan. Mary pushed me to share my story, and I got a lot of sympathy. Julia then asked if I was heading back to Michigan and said it was too bad I wasn't, as her daughter and boyfriend were going to the University of Michigan and could have ridden with me to save on airfare. I hadn't planned on going back right away, but I knew I would have to eventually. "When are you leaving?" I asked Jess. "Day after tomorrow," she said. "Okay, I'll take you," I agreed. Mary and I stayed for another hour before heading out. Once in the car, she said, "I can't ask you to stay at the house, but if you get a motel, I promise you won't be lonely." I agreed, and she directed me to a motel near her place. I checked in, got 2 keys, gave her one, and then dropped her off at home. That evening, there was a knock at the door, which surprised me since Mary had a key. I opened it to find Julia. "May I come in?" she asked. As soon as I let her in, she explained, "Mary told me everything about your trip. I've been desperate for physical connection since my husband passed 9 months ago, but people here expect me to mourn for a year. You're not from around here, and you'll be gone soon, so no one will know. If you're as kind as Mary says, I thought you could help me." Julia was older, but still attractive, and I didn't owe anyone loyalty. I pulled her close, and we started undressing. She was the first woman I'd been with who was completely shaved. After I pleasured her, we made love. She was insatiable, and we went at it until I couldn't keep up anymore. Once we finished, she quickly dressed and said, "I promised Mary I'd leave her enough." She kissed me and left. About 20 minutes later, Mary came in with her key. "Did Julia leave enough for me?" she asked with a grin. "With a little help, I'm sure I can manage." Mary knew exactly what to do, and we enjoyed the night together. Afterward, she cuddled up and said, Let's get some rest. Maybe we'll pick up where we left off in the morning. The next morning, Mary woke me with a kiss, and we had one last round before she got ready for work. She passed on the idea of showering together, saying, I need to start my divorce paperwork, and if I shower with you, I won't make it out of this room today. As she dressed, she asked what my plans were for the day. I told her I'd probably stay in the room and read. Apparently, she relayed that to Julia, because later that morning, there was another knock on the door. It was Julia again. May I come in? She asked, smiling as she stepped in and immediately began undressing. I know I'm taking advantage of you being here, but I only have until tomorrow. Mary said she doesn't mind if I borrow you, do you? I didn't mind at all. We had a pleasant morning together before she left, reminding me to pick up the kids the next day. Before she left, Julia kissed me goodbye and said, I wouldn't be upset if you came back to live here. I'll be ready to start dating in a couple of months. Who knows? I haven't figured out what I'm doing yet. Maybe I will. Mary arrived that evening and asked the same question as before. Did she leave enough for me? She had, just barely. In the morning, after a memorable wake-up, Mary hugged me and said, I'm glad you're leaving today, and I mean that in a good way. Once Jake gets served, I need to stay spotless so he doesn't have anything to use against me. If you stayed, it would be too tempting. She kissed me goodbye and left. I saw I had some time before picking up the kids at Julia's, so I called home. Good morning, Dawson and Sons. How may I help you? Morning, Glenda. Is my mom available? Bobby, even if she wasn't, I'm supposed to put you through immediately. Please tell me you're coming home. I might be. Not certain yet. I'll get your mom. 2 rings later. Bobby, where are you? St. Paul, Minnesota. What are you doing there? Getting ready to leave and come home? Thank God. I need you back to help with the business. I said I'm coming back, but not to work. Robert, I need you here. And how are you going to keep me and David apart? You know if I see him, I won't be able to stop myself. Don't worry about him. I caught him stealing from the company, and I had to let him go. I was stunned into silence. Finally, I said, I took $15,000 from the company before I left. I didn't think it was stealing, just severance for what Dad did to me. How is that piece of trash, anyway? I don't know and don't care. Sonia kicked him and David out. Did you know they moved in with her? Cindy told me. She kicked them out, too. We can settle the money later. You're still listed as being on paid leave. You may have to pay some of it back, though. I wasn't worried since the money was still untouched. I told Mom I'd see her in a couple of days and headed to Julia's to pick up the kids. Julia greeted me warmly and said goodbye to her daughter Jessica, reminding her to do well at school. After loading Jess's bags, I asked when we'd pick up Mike. Mike's not coming. We broke up last night when I found out about him and Abby Fisk. Although I'd been on a bit of a wild streak lately, I pushed away any thoughts about being alone with Jess. As we drove, we talked about her plans. She was heading to U of M on a scholarship to study pre-law. She preferred reading, so I found a country station and hummed along to the music. After a few hours on the road, Jess asked where we'd stop for the night. No need to. It's only 600 miles. We'll get there by 8. But I want to stop. I don't need to check into the dorms until the day after tomorrow. Plus, you'd miss check-in, so you'd need to find a place for the night anyway. A few minutes passed before she added, Besides, I want to find out for myself. Find out what? I overheard my mom and Aunt Mary talking. I want to see if what they said about you is true. What did they say? That you have a magical tongue and are amazing with women. You can't be serious. I am. My only experiences were with guys my age who had no idea what they were doing. Do you have a wild side? What? Ever want to do something adventurous, like maybe being with a mother and daughter or with all the women in a family? My grandmothers are gone, so it's just me, my mom, and Aunt Mary. So you're saying you have a wild side. Because I want to see what the man who slept with my mom and aunt is like? You've got it. I don't know if I can handle the pressure. You're expecting some kind of expert, and I don't know if I can live up to that. My mom raved about you to Aunt Mary. That's enough for me. Besides, with your experience, you have to be better than the guys I've been with. My first time was awful. After prom, my date rushed through it, finished in a minute, and thought it was great. I was in pain and furious. You have to be better than that. I sure hope so. Once I was completely done, she rolled over, looked up at me, and said, Thank you. I'm glad you convinced me. Can we do it again? We did, and we stayed in the room, except for meals, until just before she had to check in at the dorms. I helped her carry her bags, and she gave me her number, kissed me, and said, Don't be a stranger, I'll need you. You've spoiled me. No one my age will ever compare after this. One more kiss, and I left feeling on top of the world. Take that, Sonia. From Ann Arbor, it was a short drive to Ypsilanti. I checked into a motel, left a wake-up call, and grabbed breakfast before heading to Dawson and Sons the next morning. Even though I had keys, I didn't want to just let myself in. George, the security guard, opened the door at 8 and greeted me with a "welcome back." Glenda ran up, hugged me, and said, "Thank God you're back. Maybe now we can fix this place." "Is Mom in?" "In her office." When I walked in, Mom looked up and said, "About time you showed up. There's a pile of work waiting for you." "I haven't decided if I'm staying yet." "Nonsense. You're needed here. You can't run from your problems forever. Now get to work. We'll talk at lunch." She was right, so I got to it. It wasn't as bad as she made it sound, but there was still a lot to handle. At lunchtime, Mom and I went to Pegasus. After ordering, she asked if I'd been home yet. I told her I stayed in a motel. "Why didn't you just go home?" "Because Sonia's there. You'll have to face her sooner or later, so why not now?" "Why are you so eager for me to deal with her? After everything with Dad, you should want nothing to do with her." "It might not make sense, but I want my Robbie back, and that won't happen until you get closure. You need answers to your questions." "Questions?" "Yes, like why she did it. Was it just your father and brother? Did you do something to push her away? Until you know, you won't move on." I knew she was right, but I wasn't sure I wanted those answers. Was it something I did? And why with my father and brother? After lunch, I made a dent in the work pile. At 5:30, I left the office and sat in my car debating where to go, right to the motel or left to the house. Taking a deep breath, I turned left. Sonia's car was in the garage. I sat in the driveway, gathering my courage. Finally, I got out and walked to the door. Before I could knock, Sonia opened it, rushed at me, and threw her arms around me, crying, "Thank God you're okay." Stunned, I just stood there. Then I gently pushed her away and walked into the house. She followed me, sobbing, "Why did you push me away? I love you." I turned to her. "You love me? But you slept with my father and brother? I'd hate to see what you'd do if you hated me. You don't understand. I had to do it." "You had to? This I've got to hear. Go sit in the kitchen while I pour a drink." With a drink in hand, I sat across from her. "I don't want to be here, but Mom convinced me to face you. So go ahead, Sonia. Tell me. Remember Karen's birthday party? The one you couldn't attend because you were out of town?" "I remember. You told me to go to Karen's party even though you couldn't, so I went. Cindy was with her sick mother, so Dave was there alone. When he saw I was alone, he stuck by me all night, acting like my protector. But he wasn't very good at it. Someone, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was Dave, spiked one of my drinks with a date maltreatment pill. Dave didn't see it happen, but he noticed I was acting strange and thinks Kyle Barger might have been involved since Kyle had been around me a lot that night. Anyway, Dave took me home. But from there, I don't remember much, just what Dave told me later. He said when he got me home, he undressed me and put me to bed. Then he undressed himself and got in bed with me. He admitted he had always wanted me and saw this as his chance, thinking I wouldn't remember it in the morning. Apparently, he didn't understand how date maltreatment pills work because I started coming out of it while he was on top of me. As I became aware, my body was already fully involved. By the time I realized what was happening, I was already deep into it, and I was reacting just like I would during normal lovemaking. You know how I get when I'm close to peak? I become completely mindless. That's exactly where I was when I started waking up, begging for more without even realizing it was Dave. That's when your dad showed up. He came by to check on me like you always ask him to do when you're away. He saw what was happening and started taking pictures. I didn't even know he was there. He took several pictures, then undressed and joined in. After Dave finished, your dad got on top of me. Then Dave went again. By the time Dave took me a second time, I realized who it was, but I was too far gone to care. I don't remember how many times they both took me, but it was enough to exhaust me, and I fell asleep. The next day, Dave came by and begged me not to tell you or Cindy what happened. While he was there, your dad showed up again, saying he wanted more. When I told him to leave, he laughed and showed me the pictures he had taken. He said if I kept him happy, you'd never see them. I couldn't let you see those pictures. They didn't show a woman being taken advantage of. They showed someone who looked like they loved it. I should have trusted you and told them both to get lost, but hindsight is 20/20. How many times? I asked. Every time you went on a trip. I stared at her for a moment. Karen's party was 7 months ago, and I've been on at least a dozen trips since then. I paused, thinking. More than a half dozen. 9 trips, counting that one. She looked away, and in that moment, I knew. I don't know how, but I just knew. Sonia, you kept doing it because you liked it. You never came to me to explain what happened or trusted me to believe your story. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before and said, "No, I didn't just like it. I loved it. I wanted even more, but I couldn't risk it when you were home. I really thought that if I only did it when you were away, you'd never find out. I loved it, but I love you and didn't want to lose you. Were David and my father the only ones? No, 3 times your dad brought 3 other guys. Great, so you did gangbangs. You slept with 9 men, and I bet you loved that too. I did, but it wasn't 9. It was the same 3 each time. Do I know them? Are they people I see who'll be laughing behind my back? No, I think they were just customers your dad wanted to show a good time. I don't get it, Sonia. You say you love me, but you did this. For 7 months, my father and brother laughed at me behind my back. They treated me like a fool. And now 3 customers I deal with every day are secretly mocking me too. You love me, yet you did this? You could have told me if I wasn't enough in the bedroom, I would have worked to be better. It's not about you, baby. You satisfy me every time. It's about quantity, not quality. When you're done, you need time to recover, but I can keep going and going. It's just how we're built. Put 5 guys and a girl in a room, and you'll find 1 guy with her, another waiting to get hard again, and 3 more waiting their turn. But if you put 5 women with a guy, they'll all be watching him, waiting for him to be ready again. It's biology. There was no love in it. I don't even like your dad or brother anymore. They're both jerks. And yet you let them move in with you? They had nowhere else to go, and in a way, I felt responsible. I could have stopped it after the first time, but I didn't. I let it happen. And because of that, we got caught. When they moved in, I told them there'd be no more intimacy. I didn't know if I could ever win you back, but I knew there was no chance if I kept up with them. One night, they tried to get me drunk, but I caught on. I raised the tool toward my dad, making it clear I wasn't afraid to use it. You thought you had a chance of getting me back after all this? After I saw everything with my own eyes? I had hope. I know we see it differently, but aside from the shock of finding out, did it really hurt you? You got all the love and attention you could handle. I never said no to you, and most of the time I came after you. That's not true. You've said no plenty of times. When? Every time I wanted to try bum stuff, you shut me down. But my father didn't have any problem with it. I didn't give it to him willingly. He and Dave took it when I was pilled, and I found out I liked it. After that, you never asked for it again. I thought about suggesting it, but I figured you'd get suspicious since I'd refused so many times before. I was waiting for you to ask again, but you never did. She paused, then said, Now that we're talking about it, maybe it could be a great welcome home gift. Maybe, but I'm not coming home. Her face fell. Why not? Why would I stay with a woman I know I can't satisfy? A woman who'll always want more than I can give? I never said that. You've always satisfied me. I don't need more than you can give me. Yes, I found out I liked more, but I don't need it. What I need is you. If you have to get even with me, go find someone else for payback. But please, please come home to me. I reflected on everything that had happened and decided to keep quiet. I admit I was tempted to take her up on the welcome home gift, but that never happened. Before anything could, the front door burst open and my brother David stormed in with a cane in one hand and a Colt in the other. I've been waiting for you, you jerk. I'm going to take out your knees and see how you like it. I'm your brother. How could you do this to me? What? Did you expect a medal for sleeping with my wife? I should have killed you. Shut up, he shouted, pointing the tool at my knees. Before I could react, Sonia screamed, No! And threw herself in front of me just as David fired. Both of us were stunned, but I recovered first. I tackled him, knocking the tool out of his hand and punched him several times. He fell to the ground and I grabbed the tool, hitting him in the head with it. Then I turned to Sonia, who was bleeding on the floor. I called 911 and rushed to get a towel to try to stop the bleeding. She looked up at me, gasping, Don't leave me. Please don't leave me. The EMTs and police arrived shortly after, and they called another ambulance for David. Apparently, I had hit him too hard. He kept coming to while I was trying to help Sonia, so I had to knock him out again, about 6 times in total. It was chaos for a while. Sonia was bleeding, David was down, and I was the only one still standing. After explaining everything to the police and playing them the recording I had made on my phone, they believed my story. But shortly after they left, I got the call. Sonia had died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. I struggled with it. Her actions had shown me how much she cared, and if she had survived, I might have given our marriage another chance. The whole thing made the news. About a week later, Jess showed up at my house, giving me a hug and asking, How are you holding up? Just barely. What brings you here? I saw what Mom went through when she lost Dad. I thought you might need someone too. We shared something special, and I thought maybe I could help. We spent the next 5 months together, before she ended it telling me she'd met someone and needed to move on. David's trial came almost 8 months after everything happened. He tried to claim it was an accident, but no one believed him. He was sentenced to 20 years to life. On the day of his sentencing, Cindy called me with a favor. She wanted me to take her to bed so she could tell David. I didn't see a reason to say no, so I did. She wore me out, then went to visit David the next day and told him. Instead of getting angry, he just sat there and cried. A week later, Cindy came back and asked, "I could use a friend with benefits. Know anyone who might be interested?" We spent another 4 months together before she got a promotion that took her to Dallas. I was sorry to see her go and even considered moving with her, but she talked me out of it. "I like you, Rob, but I don't love you. I need to find someone I can love. I'm starting a new life in Dallas, and I hope to find what I need there." My father tried multiple times to reach out, but I refused to speak to him. When he died of a stroke, I went to his funeral and made a public spectacle by urinating into his grave as they lowered his coffin. Later, I learned from my mom the names of 3 customers my father was close to. I couldn't be sure they were the ones who had been with Sonia, but in my mind, I decided they were. I didn't physically harm them, but I did mess with them through the business. They ended up paying more than other customers, and they missed out on quantity discounts. It wasn't much, but I needed to do something. I know it was petty, but I couldn't help myself. Maybe it was all in my head, but I felt like I saw a smirk on their faces when we spoke. Whatever, I'm only human. And like most people, I had a need to get even. Maybe I was wrong, but it made me feel better. Then about 10 months after all this, I got a surprising call while reading the financial page of the New York Times. "Hello, Rob? It's Maggie. Do you remember me?" "Yeah, I do. My sister saved your number when you let me use your phone to call her." "I remember." "Well, she insisted I make this call. Believe me, I didn't really want to, but she said you deserve to know." "Know what?" "You're a father. You have twin sons. You've got to be kidding me." "I'm not. You're the only person I've ever been with." There was a pause before she said, "I'm not asking for anything. I only called because my sister thought it was the right thing to do." 36 hours later, I was knocking on a door in Houston, ready to start a new chapter. It's been years since that day I stood on the doorstep in Houston, ready to face the life I had never expected. Time changes things in ways I never could have predicted. I learned that in some strange way, fatherhood suited me. It gave me something real to hold on to, something that wasn't tainted by betrayal or lies. Maggie was wary at first, but I proved to her that I was committed to being there for the boys. We didn't try to force anything between us, but we managed to create a life together. One built not on passion or love, but on something far more dependable: respect. Every so often I think about the people I left behind. The graves, the courtroom dramas, the half-hearted goodbyes. They're like ghosts that linger, but they don't haunt me anymore. I did what I had to do, and I've made my peace with it. My father's betrayal, David's pathetic attempts to drag me down, Sonia's lies, they don't define me. They were chapters in my life, yes, but they weren't the whole story. My mother, surprisingly, ended up doing just fine. She took control of the business, and with me gone, she cut all ties with the family's old connections. Sometimes I think she blames herself for what happened, but she's moved on in her own way. She even remarried, a man I've never met. She's happy, or so I'm told. I don't visit much. We talk and it's civil, but I haven't felt the need to return home. There's nothing left for me there. As for Cindy, I heard she finally found someone who treated her right. We exchanged a few messages over the years, but we both knew that what we had was fleeting. She was always smarter than me when it came to emotional matters. She saw the end long before I did. I wish her well, but we've moved on to separate lives. Maggie's boys, my boys, are the best thing that ever happened to me. Watching them grow, teaching them right from wrong, and making sure they never repeat the mistakes I made. That's what keeps me grounded. Every time they laugh, every time they run to me after school, I know I've done something right. It's ironic, really. I spent so many years trying to escape my past, and here I am, shaping a future for 2 kids who saved me from becoming the man I hated. I'm not proud of everything I did, but I don't regret it either. I've learned to live with the choices I made. Life doesn't give you neat endings or happy resolutions. Sometimes you just survive, and in that survival, you find a new purpose. For me, that purpose wasn't revenge or getting even. It was learning how to move forward, to be better, even when the past tried to drag me back. In the end, I became someone I could live with, and that's more than I could have hoped for.